The mayor has to go. No, we don't have to go.
I wanna go, you should go. You have an opportunity to go.
No, it's in our budget. But you're the mayor, you have to go.
We should go a couple of days before or after we go. No, so you can hit a museum and.
Teresa.
I thought.
No, Arlene and I were talking about it, because she talked to her coworker, she's like, I don't give her this book.
No.
No, it's in our budget. Mr. Nevin, is it in our budget?
Are you going?
We don't even spend our money. We just go progress seminar. Yeah,
It's gonna be amazing.
we're really good about our budget.
Okay.
We're not abusive.
No.
The other is, don't think.
Tom, was the basketball game on or something?
That's
It's the national championship game, right?
That was a Russell. Oh,
That was a crazy second game. Oh, yeah. I just missed the one. I was
No,
gonna
it's
wait.
not. You have fun.
I had, Duke going to two, and I was just number one until that happened.
We have workshops.
His second person was gonna take Florida, so really wasn't.
Yeah, I totally, I think my brother's gonna win. He picked Florida. That's kind of, I don't even know anything about college basketball.
You know what, you picked you picked the team with the best outfit.
I was trying to pick the teams.
The best
The guys that stay
I have no
for
idea.
more than
I don't pay attention to
and
any.
the ones that are just like one and done players. And it worked out. It worked out until like Duke's game.
Are we ready?
So we're trying to get Councilmember Manalo.
Sure.
She had an act. She had a can't come. She had a
She okay?
yeah.
You know, TV?
She's okay?
She twisted brain.
Unless we're putting on the game while we're doing the budget, that sounds good to me too.
I would, but I don't wanna mess it up.
Yeah, whatever you say.
And the scary thing is all of a sudden somebody's gonna go, yeah. You're gonna go, what? That was a great budget.
Oh my God.
I try to. Our dog, when my husband watches all these sports, she yells, she's like, her tail goes under and she thinks, oh, what did I do? It's not you, it's the TV. If they get emotional or screaming.
I think my son and daughter. She said that.
Tim.
Yeah,
Did you pick up the movie? I didn't think you were gonna put it there, because
Thanks for
it's
your-
traction.
Oh, yeah, so I did hear from the county on Friday, but they don't know
Right,
in California that,
right.
coming over, so, but they said they took this up, so that's what.
And I think Minnesota just passed something about, no taxes. But I
My
didn't think,
daughter got me to see a question.
That's a little too small.
Do you remember those?
Remember those, that's the current one.
No, I used to have a nice big.
That's a new one.
Yeah,
close on you.
Oh, you might turn the heat. It's hot back there.
Tim,
Yeah.
Tim, I was only asking. I was
Make
just
sure you
only
hide it.
asking, I didn't think you were gonna put it down. Oh my goodness.
it's a good question.
Gee, wow. Just gotta be careful, I gotta be careful what I say.
No, but it's, you know what, it's a good question.
I know. Thank you, I appreciate that, but I think we're far from it.
Welcome to the City Daily City special meeting budget study session on Monday, April 7th, 2025. Before we begin, I want to begin our meeting with our land and acknowledgement. The City of Daly City acknowledges that we are on ancestral lands of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples. We recognize their enduring connection to this region and honor their history, culture, and contributions. As the indigenous protectors of this land, we affirm their sovereign rights as the original inhabitants of this land and pay respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples. Great. I think we can go and move forward. Do we do a pledge or anything? I can't remember. Okay. And if we could all, I have it in reverse order, but here we go. People please stand for their pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Okay, I think we could go ahead, move forward. I think everybody here is present. I want to say thank you for all the tech folks getting this all squared away, and I'll hand over the mic to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Mayor, Honorable Vice Mayor, and City Council members. Tonight is the second budget study session. Tonight's agenda includes a brief follow-up to council questions from the first budget study session. And next on the agenda, staff will expand on the information from the first budget study session and take a deeper look at the budget, including information regarding departmental budgets and the overall projected budgets for the general fund and all other city funds. Tonight's session is informational, as staff is not asking the city council for any decisions this evening. Feel free to ask questions during the presentation. And of course, council's feedback and questions are always welcome. Lastly, regarding the agenda, we will look at next steps. Tonight's presentation is being televised on local channel 27 and will be posted to the city's YouTube channel tomorrow. Regarding follow-up to the first budget study session, there are some follow-up to some council questions. Question number one, has the city looked into tiered fire inspection fees? Yes, tiers are being proposed in the master fee schedule for fiscal year 2026 and will be presented for council's approval at the public hearing set for April 28th. Question number two, what is happening with the increase to county dispatcher fees? Costs are being studied for both dispatcher fees, including a subcommittee established by San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. It is made up of members of the Pre-Hospital District Board and others to evaluate cost. Police dispatch proposed increases are under review. Question three, is there an update to One Shoreline? In 2019, Daly City agreed to pay One Shoreline $55,000 each year for 3 years. No new request has been received from One Shoreline at this time. Question four, are there any talks about zero property tax for seniors similar to Florida? Staff just received information from the county last Friday, and the County of San Mateo has not heard anything about this happening in California, but we'll keep the city updated. During the first budget study session, I mentioned that staff would update the projection for fiscal year 2025 after March closed. So looking at the data through March 31st, 2025, and knowing that more revenue will be coming into the city in the last quarter of this fiscal year, staff now estimates that the general fund will end fiscal year 2025 with an actual deficit of just over $1.5 million. At the first budget study session, the estimate was a deficit of $3.5 million. This estimate is based on current available data. As we do at the close of every fiscal year, I will update the council on exactly where we ended the year. And lastly on this slide is a final note that fiscal year 2025 revenue includes the last $2.7 million of revenue from the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. Now we'll move on to the fiscal year 2025-26 and fiscal year 2026-27 operating budgets. Just as a review, there are key budgeting terms, the first being the general fund reserve policy. This policy was adopted by the City Council in July of 2020, and it states that the city should maintain a minimum reserve equal to 2 months or 17% of annual operating expenditures, and that the city should maintain a targeted reserve equal to 3 months or 25% of annual operating expenditures. Next is the definition of a budgeted deficit, and a deficit occurs when the budgeted expenditures exceed the budgeted revenues in a given fiscal year. The city utilizes unrestricted fund balance in the general fund to offset any actual deficit if needed. In the case of a surplus at year end, the unrestricted fund balance in the general fund would increase. This list shows risks for the next budget cycle. The first risk is the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. There will be no more revenue loss replacement from ARPA funds, which the city has been utilizing for the last few fiscal years. As mentioned, fiscal year 2025 includes $2.7 million in ARPA funds as revenue to the city. Second risk, labor negotiations. The COLA for new contracts with labor groups can be very costly, as salaries and benefits represent 70% of operating costs for the city. And as mentioned at the first budget study session, tonight when we look at the budgets for fiscal years 2026 and 2027, there is zero COLA represented in those numbers. And as we progress further into labor negotiations, as we bring contracts to the City Council for approval, at that time we will ask for the budget for what those contracts cost. The next risk is sales tax and Measure Q sales tax. Recently, the city's sales tax consultant projected a decrease from 2025 to 2026, from last year's fiscal year 2024 into this current year. So we're projected to end this current fiscal year less than what we had last year in 2024 for total revenue for sales tax, the general sales tax, as well as Measure Q sales tax. The projections through 2031 only average 1% per year for each of those years, the next 5 years. And then also for Measure Q programming, we'll need to make sure that the expenditures that are budgeted don't outpace revenues for that funding source. Another risk in terms of this budget cycle are vehicle license fee, or VLF, shortfalls. The state of California has not guaranteed that Daly City or other cities within San Mateo County would be receiving the shortfall amounts that are occurring every fiscal year. Another risk is Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG funding, and other federal funding. If federal funding is cut, then we'll need to monitor that, and also that could cause increases to costs that would have to come from the general fund to supplement any cuts in federal funding. And lastly, vacancies make up a majority of general fund salary savings, so it would be prudent to make sure that the city does not become dependent on these savings to offset any future projected deficits or any future deficits. As mentioned earlier, the salaries and benefits make up 70% of the city's expenditures. There's a 0% COLA currently in the budget request. 20% of the budget is our departmental operating budgets. There was a 0% net increase guidance, except for utility cost or contract increases that are known, and hourly wage increases due to minimum wage increases. Those increases are included in the budget request. And lastly, fixed charges, which are charges to city departments for staff, citywide staff cost, and those are also changed due to COLAs for bargaining and also inflationary increases. This graph shows the general fund revenue by type, and it shows fiscal year 2025 budget on the left column, followed by the fiscal year 2026 budget request. The next column shows the increase or decrease from fiscal year 2025 to fiscal year 2026. The second to last column is the fiscal year 2027 budget request, and the last column shows the percentage increase from 2026 to 2027. Looking at property taxes, which is the highest source of revenue for the general fund, fiscal year 2025 budget was just over $49 million. The budget request for fiscal year 2026 is almost $51.2 million, or a 4% increase. And the budget request for fiscal year 2027 is just over $53.3 million, another 4% increase in that line item. As you can see, property taxes, we also broke out into its three components. So general property taxes, vehicle license fees, and excess ERAF. The next largest revenue type for the general fund are sales taxes, and those were almost $27.9 million in the fiscal year 2025 budget. Almost $27.2 million for fiscal 26, again showing a decrease, and fiscal year 2027, almost $27.8 million, a slight 2% increase over 2026. Sales taxes is also broken out, two components: general sales tax, the Bradley Burns 1%, as well as the half-cent sales tax, Measure Q sales tax. The next largest revenue source for the general fund is the utility users tax. That number has been slightly under budgeted in the past, so we're increasing the budgets for the 26 and 27 requests in utility users tax to reflect a more realistic number for that line item. Next is business license taxes with 4% increases year over year in the two budget years. Next highest revenue source for the city for the general fund is our charges and fees, followed by franchise fees. The next slide completes all of the funding sources for the general fund, again in descending order by magnitude, with interfund transfers, rents and interest, licenses and permits, fines and forfeitures, other taxes, program fees, revenue from other agencies, and miscellaneous revenues. On the bottom, to note for the totals, the fiscal year 2025 budget is just over $119.5 million in general fund revenues. 2026 budget request is almost $122 million, or a 2% increase. And the 2027 budget request is just over $125.5 million, or a 3% increase over fiscal year 2026. This chart shows general fund revenue by type, just in a different way. It shows the percentage of revenue by each category by type. So starting on the left pie chart, on the bottom, the orange 42%, that represents property taxes. So property taxes makes up 42% of the general fund revenue. Going up and around the chart, sales taxes account for 22% of general fund revenue, followed by 6.5% utility users tax. Next, business license tax revenue of 5.5%, and continuing along. Then the gray area, you can see over to the right, we broke that out in terms of the last 5 categories. This next chart shows general fund expenditures by type. And again, starting on the left column is the fiscal year 2025 budget, followed by the fiscal year 2026 budget request, the percentage increase or decrease from fiscal year 2025 to 26. The second to last column is the fiscal year 2027 request, followed by the percentage increase or decrease from 2026 to 2027. The highest source of or type of expenditure for the general fund is salaries, and this shows a 1% increase from 25 to 26, as well as a 1% increase from 26 to 27. As I mentioned in the first budget study session, what is in the budget request are natural increases for salaries, meaning step increases for city employees, and not including any COLAs for bargaining groups at this time. The benefits are the second highest expenditure for the general fund. Those show a 12% increase from 25 to 26 and a small 5% increase from 26 to 27. The increase for 2026, the 12%, represents costs that we know that are going up in terms of for healthcare and other benefit expenditures that the city pays for. And the 5% increase for the second budget year, does not include what will probably be the full increase in benefit costs. Once we receive those, we'll probably adjust that either at the mid-cycle adjustment between fiscal years 2026 and 2027. Continuing down the list of expenditures, general fund expenditures by size, fixed charges are next, followed by services and supplies. Next, interfund transfers, other charges, general fund capital outlay, program expenditures, and discretionary savings. What we did in some prior years from 2025 and 2024, we may have started in 2023, I can't recall, but at least for the last 2 fiscal years, we've had a negative discretionary savings that we asked departments to stick to. I believe that was a 3% discretionary savings. We did not include that into the 26 or 27 budgets. We're basically asked departments to give us sort of their bare minimum level of increases for expenditures, and we'll have them try to stick to those bare minimum increases. But as you can see at the bottom of in the total, general fund expenditures were budgeted at just over $125.5 million in 2025. And the budget request for 2026 reflects just over $129.5 million, or a 3% increase. And the fiscal year 2027 budget request is almost $133.9 million, representing, again, another 3% increase over fiscal year 2026. This pie chart shows general fund expenditures by type, starting with the highest category, which is salaries. On the right, 45% of general fund expenditures come from salaries, followed by 28% coming from benefits, and 18% from fixed charges, 10% from services and supplies, and those smaller percentages for the rest of those types. This next chart shows general fund budget requests by department. Starting with the police department, the 2026 budget request is almost $50.7 million, representing 39.1% of the general fund expenditure budget. Followed by the fire department in fiscal year 2026, almost $32.4 million, or 25% of the general fund budget. Followed by the departments you can see on this slide: recreation, public works, library, economic and community development, the finance department, and we'll show more detail on each of these departments in future slides. The second page shows the departments, again, in descending order by cost: the Office of the City Manager, the Office of the City Attorney, Human Resources, the Office of the City Clerk, the City Council budget, the City Treasurer's budget, and then non-departmental budgets. Again, these numbers are the same as the numbers we saw by expenditure type with salaries and benefits and others. Those are the same: 125.5 million, 129.5 million, and $133.9 million, respectively. As part of the general fund budget, there is the Measure Q program request, the Measure Q specific budgets. So this slide shows active Measure Q program requests from 4 different departments, and we have the dollar amount for the actuals for fiscal year 2024 in the first column, and the budget for this fiscal year 2025, followed by the budget requests for fiscal years 2026 and 2027. What we added in the third to last and the last column are the FTE that are the equivalent for most of the dollars represented in those budget amounts. Library programming in Measure Q for fiscal year 2026 is almost $560,000 and represents 3 full-time equivalent, 3 employees. Senior programming in the recreation department for fiscal year 2026 represents almost $790,000, equivalent to 4 FTE. The police program total is just over $1 million for fiscal year 2026 and just over $2 million for fiscal year 2027. You can see the detail of the 5 programs within police that are Measure Q programs, including the automated license plate readers, body-worn cameras, unmanned aerial systems, mental health crisis response unit, and a new program, data aggregation platform. Some of the costs in 2027 are higher. You can see the budgeted amounts in total for Measure Q, in the police program, $1 million in 26 and $2 million in 27. That's for replacement of a lot of equipment, including the automated license plate readers and the body-worn cameras. So those are replaced roughly every 5 years. So that'll be an increase every 2 or 3 budget cycles for those specific programs. Lastly on this list, Fire Engine 95, just over $3 million for fiscal year 2026, 9 FTE. And I did forget to mention that the mental health crisis response unit is 2 FTE for the police programs. So total fiscal year 2024 Measure Q actuals, we spent just shy of $5 million. The 2025 budget for these programs is just over $5 million. 2026 total request, almost $5.5 million. And the 2027 request, just over $6.5 million requested. This chart we've looked at before. It's just updated. And we did look at this at the first budget study session, but we didn't have any numbers yet for fiscal year 2026 and 2027. So those dollars are now in this chart. So if we look at the the fiscal year 2024 actuals, the second column with data. So we looked at that one before. We basically finished fiscal year 2024 break even almost with a small $47,000 actual deficit. Our reserves didn't change very much. They decreased by that amount. But at the end of fiscal year 2024, the general fund saw $63.224 million in reserves. That's equivalent to 6.3 months of reserves. So basically, to calculate that, we look at the reserve total, 63.2 million, and we divide it by the number in the second column, the operating expenditures, which was 120 million in 2024, and that gets us to just over 50%, or 6.3 months. Looking at fiscal year 2025, as mentioned, it looked as though through 2 quarters of the year that we might have a general fund deficit of over $3.5 million. We're looking at a little bit better now, just over $1.5 million projected deficit. If that were to occur, our reserves would decrease by that amount, by the 1.5 million, and dividing 61.7 million divided by the operating expenditures of 127.2 million would get us a reserve in months of 5.8 months at the end of this current fiscal year. Fiscal year 2026 and 2027, as mentioned, do not include revenues from ARPA. So what we're showing in fiscal 2026 is what we're budgeting, as we saw in the previous slides, what the total budget request is for the general fund. Almost $122 million of revenues and just over $129 million in operating expenditures for an operating deficit of just over $7 million. There's a very small amount currently in capital expenditures, $500,000. And if there are any additional capital projects that need to be funded by the general fund, we'd be bringing those to you at a mid-year budget adjustment, a mid-cycle adjustment, or as a separate item on a council agenda asking for additional budget. But this just includes capital expenditures of $500,000 for each year. The budgeted deficit for fiscal year 2026, as it stands today, is just over $7.5 million. Again, if that were to occur, we're just running a scenario in terms of decreasing the reserve amount by the $7.5 million, getting to $54 million, dividing that by the $129 million operating expenditure, and that would be equivalent to 5 months of reserves. And then fiscal year 2027, the same type of scenario, but that general fund budgeted deficit at this point today is almost $8.4 million, a little bit less than what we've been talking about in the past. But again, the expenditure totals don't include bargaining unit COLAs, and the capital expenditures are very small in terms of new dollars being requested, in terms of $500,000 per year. Before I get into general fund requests by department, I can pause if you'd like for any questions or comments at this time.
Vice
I
Mayor?
have a lot.
Huh?
I have a
You
few.
have a lot. Did anybody else, any of my colleagues want to go first? No? Up to
Okay.
you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Nevin. Tiers being proposed and I'll start off with slide number 4 in regards to tiers in the master plan.
Yes.
We're currently working on the master plan as per what I see here. And I'm sure we've taken into account a comparison as to how long has it been since our fees have gone up in comparison with other cities in San Mateo. Is that correct?
Well, as what we did a few years back was put the fees together in the master fee schedule, and since that time, we've been doing annual small increases that reflect really the COLA for that shows level of effort from city staff to provide services. And so those have been increased now on Daly City side each year. Some other cities also have master fee schedules that have annual increases and the like.
Okay.
But we have not done a full study like we did when we created the master fee schedule. And those we would probably do every 5 years or so. So we're coming up to this budget cycle of probably doing another consultant review of our master fee schedule.
Great, thank you. Slide number 6. This would be, I got 119 slide, in comparison with slide number 12, 119,514, 119,514, but yet this slide shows 119,803. So it's a difference of approximately 300,000. 300,000 as compared to slide number 12. Bottom line, slide number 12. So it says that this is a 2025 budget on slide number 12, but slide number 6 says it's the adopted budget. So do we see 300,000 is going to appear somewhere? Slide number 6 and slide number 12.
So the difference there is on slide 6, it's showing the adopted budget.
Exactly.
And on slide 12, it's showing the adjusted budget. So that includes the adjustments that were approved during the mid-year budget adjustment.
So basically, it's like actuals. The
It's the-
adopted budget was adopted, however, the actual is actually what we did spend, so that's a difference of about 300,000.
So it hasn't been spent yet. This is just what the adjusted budget currently is reflecting.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great, thank you. I like all of your charts and the actual monies and the percentages. But what confused me a little, and I had to do some calculations on the side, I think if we have it available to us, some folks can understand the actual dollar amount, which actually shows on your charts. However, on slide number 8, it says, cities should maintain a minimum reserve equal to 2 months, which is 17% of the annual operating expenditures. So I'm just wondering what 17% of what? So I did some calculations, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I see you smiling. So 17% of the 2025 is actually $20,371,161. Does that sound about right? I mean, if I knew what 17% was, well, what is that figure for 2025 and 2026 and 2027, which I don't have. I just have to basically do a calculation. And so am I doing the correct calculation?
That sounds correct.
Sounds about
and
right.
that would be, we could show that in a different way at the next budget study session, which would be comparing the reserves in months in terms of what the actual reserves are. But
Absolutely.
we could say what the preferred reserves are and what the minimum reserves are.
Excellent.
So we can do that.
Great, because I
Okay.
did the same and taking 25%, which is on slide number 8, and compute that out to 29,950,000. So, you know, if I can
Yeah.
see those numbers,
Yeah.
I think it would help tremendously.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Slide number 9, I put a little check mark under COLA, and you actually answered the question in a later slide, but you said our salaries for the folks is 70% of the budget.
Salaries plus benefits. So, yes.
You're one step ahead of me, because that was
Okay.
gonna be my next question. Okay, go ahead.
No, that's fine.
Am I, okay, all right.
And then with another slide broke it out, so 42% salaries and 24% benefits, so the total being roughly 70.
Yeah, and I finally saw that. Oh, I'm getting there to that slide, but that's good. Any idea what the other cities pay in salaries
Oh, as a percentage?
as a percentage?
We track, and this has been looked at
Okay.
for a very long time, but we track similar to other cities. Our cost structure, our revenue structure is very similar to most other cities. We have differences with respect to what the actual percentage is for, let's say, property tax total, sales tax total.
Other
But
areas can
they're
change.
number one, number two,
Right.
is the same as our number one, number two. The difference also, for example, with sales tax is whatever city you are thinking about or looking at, they'll have a different mix for their sales tax in terms of ours is pretty evenly split among auto versus retail sales versus food and beverage. So we have like a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Other cities will have different mixes. But in terms of our expenditures and our revenue, that's sort of the typical city scenario.
All right, well, is it possible that another city could be expending 83% for labor alone? I'm just wondering if we're
salaries and
shooting
benefits?
ourselves in the foot and trying to keep us under 70% when, you know, it could be more as comparison with other cities. I mean,
Yeah,
what's the
that's-
highest you've seen for labor costs, if you've seen any?
That would be extremely high. You would have, you know, with all the other costs that you'd have in a city, including services and supplies, and you know, as part of that, that's education and training and travel and meetings, and those would be very pinched if all of the money is
I
just going
understand.
to salaries and benefits.
I
You wouldn't
understand.
be, yeah.
In other words, we'd have to cut somewhere, but I just want to make sure that we are basically in line and not putting any undue pressure on ourselves in the sense of not taking care of our labor force, because I think labor is very important. That's the only reason I'm bringing it up and asking that question.
Okay.
I circled slide number 11, but I can't remember why I circled it, so I'm going to pass that one up. On slide number 13, I guess this pertains to our master fee schedule, because I see something here, fines and forfeitures, which is on the right side pie chart of 2%. Have we looked at our fines and forfeitures as composed to when have we increased them, or have we increased them? I'm just looking for additional ways to get revenue.
In terms of,
Speeding tickets, parking tickets.
yeah, is that part of the master fee schedule? It possibly was not part of the master fee schedule in terms of looking at a comparison as to what should be charged, because actually the fee schedule focused on cost of services, so as opposed to
Cost
fines and-
recovery at a minimum?
Correct,
At a minimum.
right. So fines and forfeitures wouldn't fall into like a cost recovery type.
Right.
But in terms of where we are with other jurisdictions, we can look into that.
Okay. Your labor costs, and now slide number 15 answers it. I had first put a question mark by the 45%, but you indicated to me it's 45% plus benefits, which comes up to 73% in this particular.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
that answered my
For the
question.
26 budget request, correct.
Right. Almost done.
Okay.
Slide number 19. I did some calculations. You said if you took the reserves and you divided it by the operating expenditures, then you would get the reserves in months?
You'd have to multiply the number by 12, and then you get the reserves in months.
Okay, because I didn't multiply by 12.
Okay.
Yeah,
That would be, if it was 0.5, for example, 50%, that means you would be at 6 months of reserves.
Okay, well, I already did one of them, and I'm just basically checking. So I did that, so I get a 0.48. So now I should multiply 0.48, and I should get 5.8.
Yes.
That's what I'm going to do right
Yes,
now.
okay.
48 times, well, 5.76.
We
Okay.
rounded it. Okay.
All right. So there's a way that we can fudge on that number. Well, not basically, I may be using the wrong word, but if our operating expenditures go up, subsequently, that can reduce that number in reserves.
That's correct. So this is as of closing March.
Yes.
So we have three months left in the fiscal year. Our projection
Right.
at this point is revenues at 127.2 million, expenditures at 127.2 million also, but with just over $1.5 million of CIP expenditures from general fund projects. So that would be the resulting deficit for fiscal year 2025 if everything comes in the way we're projecting. A quarter is a long time to have, changes to, but and also, as you saw from 6 months of actuals, we estimated $3.5 million deficit, and coming in a little bit better in that quarter, with less expenditures and more revenues as a combo,
Sure.
it's down $2 million of projected deficit,
So getting back to what council said, 17, was it 17?
17% minimum.
% minimum. So basically, what you're saying is I can take 17% of this number, and we can see the overage that we have? Because my original calculation, 17% would be, right now speaking, 20,371,161. So if I subtract that from 61,668, we basically have about 40 million difference.
Yes, another way to look at it is that you calculated 0.48, so you had 48%. So 48% minus 17% is what the overage is.
All right. Well, Mr. Nevin, I'm no expert by any means, but I'm just trying to take this information in, and thank you for clarifying some things for me. I think that's going to help in going a long way, and it helps myself and my colleagues to understand basically the difference. Not that I want to play with that money, but at the
you want to
same
see
time, yeah, I just like to see it and know that it exists. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, where we stand right now at 5.8 is actually tremendously good, I think. But I can see as we go into 26, that goes down to 5.0 and 4.1. So it's just good information to know. And I think that's all I have right now. Thank you, Mayor and my colleagues.
Can I get to Justin? Quick? I just got a text message from Councilmember Manalo if she can go after the Vice Mayor. So Councilmember Manalo, if you're there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can everyone hear me?
Sure can.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, great questions and comments, Vice Mayor. I was able to track it all through the presentation. My first question is to staff. with the transit occupancy tax that was shown, is that the up-to-date numbers currently?
Good point.
Those are within
Good.
business license. It's another, okay. So the transit occupancy taxes, TOT taxes are within other taxes. And those are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, fourth from the bottom in terms of, it's on slide 12. Those are where transit occupancy taxes come in, other taxes.
Okay, but I mean, are they currently up to date, or is there still some analysis that, that needs to be looked at? Or is this kind of the current number?
Yeah, you're right. It's
Most accurate number. Sometimes you have to wait on whether it's our consultants or, and then property tax, for instance, we have to wait on getting that information. Just wondering if this is kind of where we're at, or if there's still some more information that might come to play.
it's where we're at in terms of sort of status quo projections. So TOT, we look at typically how it's been increasing over the last 5 years, and that's how we project out into the budget cycle typically. So that's with status quo of the hotel and motels that we currently have in Daly City. That would be the projection of TOT, what you see.
And then I think this is for maybe fiscal year 2026. I have been seeing that there are a lot more homes on the market in Daly City, a lot more than in the past. And so, given the fact that they might sell within this year, could it be the following year or so, or 2 years, that we will have a change in those numbers?
Was for which category were you referring to? I thought I heard you say phones.
Property tax. I'm just saying
Property tax.
there's definitely an increase in a lot of, I see more homes actually going up for sale.
Homes going up for sale. When there is a home sale, we will see when there are more home sales in a given year than prior, we will see an increase in transfer taxes coming into the city. That's a
Property tax. I'm talking about property tax, not in the property tax, right?
yeah. As the value of the home is larger than what it previously was. Yeah. We track that. Well, the county basically tracks that, and we have access to the county system. So we're always looking at that they give us those numbers specific to Daly City. So when they do lock in property tax revenue, and any changes that we'll see will be the increases that you're talking about, sales of homes. If that is relatively higher than prior years, we will see an increase in the following year. And that would give us, I showed on one slide that the projection is we're going to increase property tax revenue by 4% from 2025 to 26, and another 4% from 2026 to 27. If 26 or 25, for example, has a stronger year, then those would change. And what we do is we look at that, and if the county number to us changes, we'll bring it to you at a mid-year adjustment and increase the property tax budget accordingly.
Okay. Yeah, I just seen that there's more on the market than before, and so it's just what do you call it? Just the possible projection. When that happens. When they get sold, and so always looking to see, where we would be getting more revenue. And so, yeah. I feel like there's a shift in that. Like a lot of older folks that have had homes for a long time, you know, are looking to actually probably cash out from it now, you know.
Right.
And so,
Yeah,
and a lot of people are retiring, moving other places, and so I just have been seeing that. I kind of track like in our city over time, not only this year, like years before, and that's where I'm like, oh my goodness, you know, in this neighborhood, there's a couple more, another one, and so, yeah. But thank you for your presentation. I think everything, I'm glad to see that gap actually decreased to 1.5. I mean, in the beginning of the presentation versus at around 3 million. And so I think at least that was a good sign. So thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Manalo. Councilmember Perano.
So what stands out to me is the risks, knowing, and I mean, all of us have been listening to the news, and we know that consumer confidence is declining, and that would equal then is perhaps they will. Oh, we lost her. She may have to call back. Thank you for changing. So that's on 9. So my concern is again, the risks. Number one, we do not have any more funds, or we have very little, 998,000, I think you had said, with regards to the American Rescue Plan Act, little left that we had, and it's already earmarked. And then, again, as we all know, we're all watching TV, the federal government is doing all kinds of shenanigans, and which then, in my opinion, and probably all of us, that consumer confidence will go down. And my concern is sales. A lot of what we do and we get are sales. Now, I did hear, for instance, there was one day and I'm just throwing this out as a I was speaking with someone at City Toyota, and they had one day sales, like, I'm going to quote, like 53 car sales in one day or a weekend, let's say, because people are buying now because they don't know if the prices are going to go up because of the tariffs. So that's a concern, which then may hurt us because of what people are feeling. The other thing is to mention the vehicle license fee. And it's if I recall correctly, we're a year or two behind where the state gives us the money. Is that correct?
Typically, when the shortfall occurs, when the state has reimbursed, the city would be 2 fiscal years later.
Right. And so the concern is because that is not guaranteed. So they at any point can say, well, we haven't balanced our budget, so we're going to hold on to this and we're not giving it to you. We're not going to give it to you in 2 years. We're just not going to give it to you. So that's a concern. And how much kind of money that is when we look at that? What do we depend on
For
from
the
them?
fiscal year 2024, it's just over 6 million, I believe, 6.1 million.
So that's $6 million that we would not have if they decide not to give it to us. And there's no guarantee.
Correct.
Okay.
We also are tracking this state budget cycle closely, and the shortfall amount was not included in the January revised governor's budget. So we're really focused on the May revised budget and
Okay.
hoping that that it's included in that.
And the $6 million that we're talking, that's something they already owe us, right?
Correct.
Right. So that's from 2 years ago, $6 million, and then they owed us. They owe us for 1 year. Is that roughly around the same? Do you guys project how much that is?
The projections, we had a lot of meetings with the county in the past year regarding shortfall amounts. One of the deputy county executives did a presentation at the Board of Supervisors, and the county encouraged cities to do similar presentations to councils. And I did actually encouraged us to present that same presentation to our city councils, and I did that. One thing they did look at is a projection of what those shortfalls would be in the next 10 years. And the projections are much higher than what the current shortfalls are. So as this year, we're talking about receiving or not receiving $6 million from the state, and the shortfalls increase year over year over year, where the total 10-year just for Daly City was over $100 million. So it was averaging more about 10 to 12 million per year when you get out that far. So each city sort of had their own numbers. We're encouraged to share those with their city councils in terms of what was at risk in each city.
How long do we have to wait to see if we may get what they owe us from 2 years ago? You're following their budget. When do they?
We've participated in the county's effort to send letters to the state, to our legislators to help, our local legislators to help advocate for us at the state level for San Mateo County. There are only 3 counties in the state of California that have a shortfall. And I know that the county reached out to the state a few years ago wanting to have some sort of permanent fix to the issue. And the response from the state was that the permanent fix would be that the state not have to pay the counties back for what the shortfall amounts are. So I wouldn't say that was, I wouldn't categorize that as negotiations. It was sort of the end of the conversation at that point. I know that there's interest from our county to try to have communications with state agencies, the Department of Finance, and bring that up again to try to reignite some sort of conversation about making this statutorily happen and not have to be asked for every year as it is now.
So it would be automatic, like.
From our point of
hope.
view, it would
Right.
be, that would be what we would like. But we don't, at this point, there's not a lot of traction with that conversation with the state. We're hoping, again, that the May revised budget will include the VLF shortfall for San Mateo County. And I believe the other counties like San Mateo, we've always received our shortfall, again, 2 years late, but we've received it every single year. So we're hoping this year's the same.
Yeah, me too. Me too, 6 million. So on a positive note, I'm going to get this right? Measure Q is people buying on the internet. Is that?
Measure
No.
Q comes in multiple ways.
Okay.
It could be at a location in Daly City, at a storefront, a restaurant in Daly City. We would receive that half-cent sales tax. The difference between the two sales taxes, the Bradley Burns 1% sales tax,
Right.
is a point of sale sales tax. So if the sale took place in Daly City, we would always receive that 1%. The Measure Q sales tax is a point of destination sales tax. So if a Daly City resident went and purchased something somewhere else, but then, like, let's say
Oh,
a
right.
car, for example,
Right.
and it was registered in Daly City, then we could get some of that residual sales tax from that. But if something is purchased in Daly City that has to be delivered outside, we would lose that in terms of having that half-cent sales tax on it. But in general, we do receive most of the economic activity within Daly City, both the Bradley Burns 1% and the half-cent Measure Q sales tax. So when we track and look at what we receive in revenue, the Measure Q revenue is roughly half of the Bradley Burns revenue.
I'm sorry. And the internet, when people buy on the internet, that's Measure.
So there is another source for sales tax. I mentioned that Daly City, we have three main sources of sales tax revenue, being food and beverage sales, retail sales, and then transportation. Transportation includes car and gas. Another 10% of what Daly City receives in sales tax revenue is from the countywide pool. So if a transaction took place in San Mateo County, then the county calculates what economic activity is happening in each city. And they do it every quarter when we receive that. They'll say, for example, Daly City represents 8% of the activity in the county. Daly City is going to get 8% of the countywide pool. So that revenue comes in through sales tax, and that represents roughly 10% of our sales tax revenue. And those are transactions that could be Amazon sales or things like that, that would come into the county pool, and we'd receive it that way.
So with everything that's happening nationwide and what's happening in the state, how is that going, or how are you projecting that to affect our budget?
At this point, it is a bit reactionary in the sense that we're trying to project based on historicals. However, as I mentioned on one slide, I think in the first budget study session, I showed property tax revenue, and it was a 10-year graph. And property taxes increased, a very similar amount every year, but I think the 10-year average was 6% per year or something in property tax revenue increases. What I mentioned at the time was this graph is a great graph. It shows how much revenue the city's been receiving and how much increase there's been in a 10-year period. It also represented a decade of no housing downturn. There was no downturn in the last decade, even with COVID. COVID was a sales tax recession and not a housing market recession. So what is going to happen with the housing market in the next 2-year budget cycle? I don't know. The Fed is closer to knowing what is going to happen, but until downturns occur, then we could shift. Then we could come at a mid-year budget. We could come in January of 26. We can come at a mid-cycle adjustment in the middle of a 2-year budget. We could say, this is what the trend looks like now. So we're going to need to decrease our property tax budgeted, our estimate in our budget. And that's what we would do in that case. We also meet quarterly with our sales tax consultant, and we get new projections that go out to 2031 for sales tax. So we kind of know what's going on this year, what does it look like for next year. So when our consultant comes back and tells us, we're looking at 1% increases for the next 5 years, then that's what we're going to be putting in our budget until that information changes from them, and then we change course.
Okay. Those were my concerns.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Perano. Councilmember Pamela Giovanni.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I just have a few questions. One is, I think we talked about, let me see, in order. You answered a lot of them. Thank you, Councilmember. Is there any way to project, like in our city, just like other cities, we do a lot, some do outsourcing. Like I know that sometimes it's, in departments because of low staffing or what have you. I mean, there are valid reasons. But is there any way to track those monies? And I believe one recent one is a lot of seniors, I believe that even contacted our city manager, were concerned because they're outsourcing the residential stickers and they no longer come to City Hall, and then they have to mail it to someplace out to another state, and they're not feeling comfortable. And they were asking me, well, how much does that cost? We used to go to the cashier at City Hall, and what are those costs? So is there any way that we can track some of those things and and see maybe what the city, what is the best way to go now, because I didn't even know that it was outsourced, but because I still thought that people could come in, but they brought it to my attention, and so they're no longer able to come in and get the residential sticker. So just little things like that for outsourcing.
Yeah, specifically on that one, the outsourcing took place, I think, early in COVID. And so
Oh, yeah, that makes
the
sense.
residential parking sticker program, as you mentioned, you
Yeah.
could walk into City Hall and pay for and get the sticker. It's been outsourced to the same company that does, I believe, our parking fines. So Turbo Data does that. Their mailing address, you're right, is out of state.
Right,
It's
so
not
it's-
that they're
yeah.
don't have a local presence as well, but that's where their mail processing center is. But we do, when people do come into the cashier, we give them the form and walk them through the process of how to, pay for and get a residential parking sticker. So we do help them through the process. It's just that they are, you're correct, they're no longer could come up and pay and get the sticker there.
Yeah. So for our seniors, so would it make sense to even like for the council to even look at that, or, and, I mean, you're the finance person, so it's a lot of elders that have brought that issue up to me. So for them, I guess, like you said, you see something that's definitely not Daly City, which they're used to, and even if you walk it through the process, so they come in, they fill out the form, they walk through the process, but they're still not able to get their sticker in their hand when they leave.
That's
Or
true.
be mailed to
That's
them.
correct.
Okay. So, if it's possible, like, to look at some of the outsourcing things that maybe we did in COVID, but I don't know if we could switch or not. I don't want to put a burden on any of the employees, for sure. The other thing I have is, I know that we also have, and I think that Councilmember Perano's familiar with the STEP of how that works for our employees. How often, and does the STEP, is it for all employees? Just, would you mind explaining that?
Sure. Each position, not each, but most positions in the city have 5 steps.
Yeah.
So employees, when they're hired into the city, can be hired in at, most of the time, if it's an entry-level position, would be hired in at step 1 of that salary. And the salary schedules show each of the steps for each position. So what happens is if an employee is brand new to the city, they get hired on day 1, they're hired and offered step 1 of that position. Their first year, 12 months, is a probationary period. Let's say they pass the probationary period, they're going to attain step 2. So it's an annual step increase. Once you reach step 5 in that specific position, then that's when there are no more step increases for that position. The steps also, just by the way, are equivalent to 5%. So each step for every position in the city is a 5% step. If a city employee works for the city for a few years, gets promoted to a different position, again, they might start that position at step 2, step 3. They'll have a couple additional steps in the next 2 or 3 years to attain step 5. And then again, that's the last step of every position in the salary schedule.
So included in that, then just so that we know that when you go in, and then whatever we decide, like we do with our contracts, whenever we do those and going forward, the person gets a step and then they get whatever we decide for all the city, because we want to make sure everything's fair to all the employees, correct?
Correct. The step increases are in addition to any cost of living adjustments that the city
Correct.
would provide for bargaining units. And secondly, I'll just note that step increases occur typically every 12 months. It's also with a performance appraisal that is satisfactory.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. We want to make sure everything is fair for the employees, because that's when, without them, we wouldn't have any services. Okay, and then the other thing is, I believe Linnell, correct me if I'm wrong, said we had enough CDBG funding for this year, but it's going forward that I think our mayor is on the committee, and that we have enough for this year, but it's going forward that we may not.
It's unpredictable, right?
I believe
Yes.
going forward is the question mark of what's going to
Right.
happen with CDBG funding, what's going to happen with the
The federal monies.
HUD and those, yes.
So given that the market, as was already alluded to, has gone a little, how would we say, unstable, and then some have predicted that it may be, well, of course, I'm just throwing it out there because we don't really know yet. It could change again tomorrow, headed towards the recession. Some say 60%, maybe, some maybe 40%, and it's unpredictable right now, as you know. Probably something you've never seen in a long time. So for us to prepare, what would be the indicators and that you would bring to us, or that we would have to, from our city manager, that we would prepare to make sure that everything is okay for our employees and the city and the services, that the indicator that we may be heading in that direction, given the volatile of the market?
Right, and the two ways that the city, our city, but our neighboring cities as well, experience downturns in the economy is typically through property taxes if there's a housing market downturn, but more often than not, sales tax decrease from a lowering of general purchases in the economy. So, as I mentioned, in terms of how we react to it and bring information to the council, would be for sales tax is through that quarterly meeting that we have with our sales tax consultant. Updates, what did we do quarter over quarter, comparing it to the last quarter, comparing it to the quarter the year before. So we do a lot of analysis with our consultants and try to get as best of a projection as we can. On the same thing with the property tax component. I'm part of a countywide finance officers group, and the county comes and presents to us often, and at least quarterly we'll have a presenter from the county controller's office talking about where we're going with property tax revenue in the county. So it's just something that is monitored frequently so that we can give you information as quickly as possible.
Because you're right, because going forward, we don't know how much expendable income people are going to have to go out and buy goods, other than just things that are just needed rather than food, gas, and things that are needed. It may be a little bit different moving forward. And so I appreciate you guys looking on the rest of this. And one more question is, I want to thank the city manager and yourself for looking into the fees schedule. And I believe that's in an upcoming meeting that the city manager spoke about. We're going to be talking about the inspection fees
We have
upcoming.
a
Yeah.
public hearing.
Yeah, thank you, by the way, yeah.
April
And thank you.
28th, I
Yeah.
believe, yes.
So that's it for me right now. And if we have anything else, I guess we can just contact the city manager. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, I just have a couple of questions. Just looking at slide 18, active measure Q program request. I just want to just get more information about, I understand that we have like contracts, and I guess my question's around expenses and contracts. Like, how often do the body worn cameras get like, because you said every 5 years, correct?
Correct.
Now, does that change too for like the automated license plate readers? Is there like a expense or evolving expense that changes with technology for that as well?
Those are on a similar schedule because I believe they were added as Measure Q programs around the same time.
Okay.
And the 2027 request, the second year of the budget, includes some equipment replacement.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that's also with the unmanned aerial systems too, right? Because I know that they're evolving technologies probably have increased costs as well, or?
Right, and so the 2025 and 26 numbers are relatively small for that program, but then increase for 27.
Okay.
But I will mention that for Depending on how many license plate readers we're able to purchase in 27 and body-worn cameras in 27, I'm certain that the 28 budget request would be smaller.
Okay.
So we get back to more of a maintenance type of cost.
Yeah, I think those are all important for security here in our community. And I just needed a little bit more information. Like, what is a data aggregation platform? Is that like a new system that we're using to aggregate the data? Is that a platform that we're using to?
It is. I don't have.
Oh,
a
Cameron, you want to come
specific
through?
answer on that one.
Here comes the chief.
Chief, please.
Good evening, how are you?
Good.
So the data aggregation platform it's currently, the company is called C3 AI. It's out of Redwood City. It's a company that we partnered with within the county with the start of the BSCC or Organized Retail Theft Grant. The county as a whole partnered with C3, and the whole idea behind the data aggregation is we have in law enforcement multiple sources or silos of information. We have our records management system, we have LPR systems, we have jail records management systems. So we have multitude of individual silo-based systems. So if I wanted to check John Smith in any one of these systems, I have to go log into all these different systems. This data aggregation platform basically takes all of those systems, it goes out, searches every single system, comes back with the refined search specific to what I'm looking for, and then also connects some of the dots associated to associated persons, the vehicles they're associated to. So I can search John Smith, but not only do I get John Smith, now I get his vehicles that have hit automated license plate readers. And so it's an investigative tool that really is intended to be a force multiplier and save a lot of time for officers doing investigations.
Thank you, Chief. And then one quick question: do we share some of these like technologies across like for instance like for fire, right? Do we use the aerial systems for like fire just in case? Does that kind of work, or does fire have their own technology?
It's a great question, and one that could be lengthy, so I'll try and keep it short. I'll go back and answer one of the other questions real quick before I jump into that. You were asking a little bit about some of the scale and numbers between 26, 27.
Right.
We've been on an Axon contract. So Axon is body-worn cameras. It's our fleet dash cameras inside the car. It's our tasers. It's a lot of the software that goes behind that. Mm-hmm. They're coming out with a bunch of other software to help officers in the field and report writing. So we've been on a contract for the last 5 years. That contract expires next fiscal. We're currently looking at a new contract to re-up that relationship with Axon so we can maintain our body cams, everything else that comes with that. And that's where the jump in cost is. So the Axon contract that we were on was a 5-year contract with no COLAs, no add-ons, no nothing. So this next contract will have that. And we also lose the BSCC grant in 27. So everything prior to 27 was somewhat supplemented by the BSCC grant. In 27, it no longer is. The grant expires at the end of 26. So that's why there's a little bit of a jump there. And it's also a little deceiving in the sense that 26 for the body-worn cameras is 363,000. 27, it jumps to 833. Well, that prior contract did not include our tasers and a couple other things. The new contract lumps all of that together. So that number was paid for somewhere else. It just isn't reflected here on the Measure Q for 26. So we'll be coming back to council probably, hopefully in the next 4 to 6 weeks with that new Axon contract and a lot of that discussion. Getting back to the unmanned aerial systems, currently we have a pretty robust program. We have about 4 or 5 UAS systems. We have approximately 15, 20 pilots. We've had great success with that so far. There is a future in drone as a first responder technology. Some agencies are using it. It is an absolute force multiplier and game changer for community safety, officer safety. Part of what that new contract shows for Axon will include the opportunity to expand into drone as a first responder. We're early in the conversation with a lot of these things, but I have spoken with the city manager. I've spoken with some of the other department heads. There is an opportunity for us to utilize our platform universally across the city, not only to support fire for fire needs, search and rescue, overwatch for fires themselves. There's an opportunity for public works and water wastewater to do the inspections for all the water tanks, the inspections for the systems, as well as if there's a water main break, and this is just an example, I'm not versed on this environment, but if there's a water main break at 2:00 in the morning, typically the process is call somebody out, they have to get a truck to go out and survey, figure out what the problem is, call back in, find the resources, have them come out. Whereas now, hypothetically, in the next 6 months, I could launch a drone, send a link to whoever from water wants it, they can look at the field from their house, and deploy resources from there. So there'll be an opportunity for a significant game changer as far as force multiplier when it comes to staffing and time and allocation for those resources. So not yet, but hopefully in the near future.
All right, thank you so much, Chief. That was really gave me a clear picture on
There's
what
a lot there.
all
There's a lot there.
the new technologies around public safety. Thank you. I have no more questions. Oh, Vice Mayor Glenn Sylvester.
Thank you. So since I have you there, Chief, and Mayor, thank you for that question, because I was looking at that data aggregation platform myself, and I think 132,000 is very cheap. Does that have any relation to the police program total? Oh, no, I'm reading totals. That's not tool. All right. I'm looking at line number 3 on that slide.
Yeah, that's the total for the police programs, and the
Got it.
5 underneath it are comprise the 5 programs. Yes.
Got it. First of all, I want to say, again, thank you, Mayor, because the use of the drones as a force multiplier across the city is an excellent idea. And you have to have licensed unmanned, is it AB or something like that? They must be licensed.
UAS, unmanned aerial
Yeah,
systems, yeah.
they must be licensed.
Yes.
Right, and you said you have 15 who are licensed?
Yeah, we have 15 now,
Wow.
and they get Part 107 license through the FAA, and they also get a POST, so California Police Officer Standards and Training certification through the state as well.
All right. Access to proprietary systems is very, very important. Now, help me understand, Daly City, you have your own local database to check on arrests.
Yes, we have
San
a,
Francisco, we call it cable. What does Daly City use?
so we use RIMS, which is our record management system.
RMS.
RMS is records management system.
Right, got it.
Our specific vendor is Sunridge,
Got it?
and RIMS is the system.
You also mentioned jail records. And where's that from? San Mateo County?
San Mateo County, the Sheriff's Department, yes.
And is there any other system?
Internally,
Locally? Local.
yeah, well, Versaterm is our CAD system through County Dispatch.
CAD, right.
So we have that. We have access to our ALPR data.
Okay.
We have a few of those things.
So what I'm hearing is that they don't talk to each other, basically. You have to query each one of those systems.
Correct.
And this data aggregation platform will help you to pull in that information so that you don't have to check, for instance, 3 separate databases. You can only run a name once, and it will automatically check all of them. Is that correct?
Do you know how many systems it queries at once, roughly? To answer the question, yes, it will check every single system that's
Right.
loaded into the data aggregation system, yes.
And we're talking on a local level. We're talking on a local level.
It does, go ahead.
Does it do state CLETs in the same query?
So not yet.
Okay,
We do query local San Mateo County agencies, RMS systems,
right.
county sheriff's department systems. It does query NICRIC. Not yet, but it
Wow.
will. We are working towards querying San Francisco, Oakland, Alameda, Contra Costa County, and the state system for CLETs. Yes,
Okay, for CLETs. How about NCIC?
that might be a little more challenging, but it's coming. There's a lot of hurdles to getting access to those.
Yeah,
But yes.
NCIC is federal.
Yes.
So basically, it makes it much easier for the one doing the investigations. It's basically the officers on the field, so that he or she doesn't have to, well, okay, I got to run this system. After that's done, got to run this system. After that's done, I'm looking for efficiency and the availability to move forward and query all these systems. All right.
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I was listening to Councilmember Manalo, and I made a note. This is for Mr. Nevin. How much of every dollar in property tax on the sale of homes, or we as those who own property, get back from San Mateo County? How much of every dollar?
I can't recall off the top of my head, but maybe I'll give you a chart that shows it next time.
Okay, you know, I generally don't try to ask a question that I don't already know the answer. To my understanding, it's 15% of every dollar. So if we took the sale of a $1.4 million home and multiply that by the normal tax rate of 1.14%, that number will come out to 15,960. And out of that 15,960 that goes to San Mateo, 15% of that is 2,394. So on your slide, you estimated real estate property revenue for the year is approximately $33 million. And that's a lot of money. So my point to Councilmember Manalo, an assessment was done in Daly City for the year of 23-24, and it is estimated that the reassessed value of homes in Daly City totals $1.27 billion, which is an estimated of 7.87% growth. So basically, I'm being optimistic. I know everyone's not going to sell their home, or we're not asking them to sell their home so that the city can get more money, but I just think that it's good information to know. Back in 21, 22, it was $45.5 million. 23, 24, 46.5 million, which represents 40, I got a whole bunch of figures here, but I just wanted to reiterate what Council Member Manalo had brought up, and seeing all the homes for sale. I think it's looking pretty good, and just wanted to indicate that I'm kind of optimistic, and I think you've done an excellent job on your figures here, and basically, I just wanted to validate and verify your information that you're providing to us. Thank you. That's all I have.
Real quick.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor. So given that we were on the property tax question, Mr. Nevin, so just explain to me, if you don't mind, if you have a commercial property tax versus a residential property tax, what percentage is the same, or is it different?
Yeah, I'll look into those
Yeah.
actual.
And then my other question is, the largest percentage that we have in Daly City are the people of those seniors who have opted in for the Prop 13. How many people that own homes here pay property taxes, which obviously would be on the lower end because of Prop 13? And what percentage would that be?
Everybody pays property.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll reach out to the county controller's office.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure Mr. Ragosa would have it. Thank you very much. That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Rebut, Mr. Mayor.
Go right ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Nevin. If you're a senior and you paid $200,000 for your house, and over the years, it's assessed close to $800 or maybe even $1 million, but based upon Prop 13, you only pay taxes on the
Right.
basically the initial price.
That's
so
correct.
if we take 200,000, that's what your property tax is based on. Where you gain the most is when the sale of the
Correct.
property and the new owner has to pay on the basically the sales price.
Right.
correct.
So I'm trying to determine, Councilmember DiGiovanni, her question, do we want to know how many of those seniors are under Prop 13 and how much are they paying as opposed to brand-new sales?
Oh, thank you, yeah.
I'm just trying to understand the question.
Well, that way, because I know that how many we have in our community that are under that, and how many more we're gonna make the highest of the property tax.
Okay.
I would ask the county if they're tracking it to that,
They
at
track
that
that
level, yeah.
information. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, through the mayor.
Go ahead.
Hot topic.
Well, I was just looking, because I was listening about it. Prop 13 began in 1978,
Right.
right? So, I mean, I'm guessing that it's slowly, the number of people that have Proposition 13 with their house, it's getting less and less, I'm guessing, right? It wasn't like it was, let's say 20 years ago, we had probably had more people. And
That's correct.
Right? So
Yeah, the percentage
percentage is
would be
going
going
down.
down, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Councilmember Manalo just texted me about having another question. So, Councilmember Manalo, if you're online.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. And I also wanted to say thank you, Vice Mayor, for reiterating earlier the point around looking ahead as far as the resale of homes in the future, and seeing that. And I know that with your real estate background as well, so you understand kind of those type of projections. My question is also around the future developments that we have. Can we look at an analysis in the future, for instance, the homes that are going to be by Bayshore? And I know that I think the developer will be KB Homes. They're obviously doing some construction there, but those are going to be homes that are going to be 100% sold, and they're going to be single-family homes. And so with that, I think, as we look at the projections ahead, these are also opportunities to us to make sure that those types of projections are included. I think, at one point we would ask about the Martin homes, but now they're here. They're, I think, almost all 100% sold, but there's still some, I think, still being built out. I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 homes. So my I think, request is to make sure that we capture the development that's happening right there by the Bayshore as well. So also include that in the projection. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Manalo. Any other more questions or feedback from my colleagues?
Just
Councilmember
real
Prime.
quick. Yeah, I was Googling. Because this Proposition 13, I always thought it just affected the people at the time that had a home at that time. But in reading, it does keep many of us not to have like a huge increase. It also keeps it to a certain percentage, a 2% increase.
Maximum increase. Yeah.
Right, maximum increase at 1 year or each year. It would hate to add a burden on so many homeowners if we didn't have Proposition 13 to help at least gradually give us those increases, because that would be a huge burden on any homeowner, regardless if they bought it in 78 or.
That's why young folks can't buy homes. It's hard for them.
No, it's just interesting. But anyway, just a little tidbit. Yeah.
And just a general note to some of the items that Councilmember Manalo brought up earlier with regard to the within Daly City specifically and the transfer of homes and how that affects, our future property tax revenue. I do recall just in the most recent years when the county has come and we're looking at the county platform, Daly City in the last couple of years may have had a slightly higher percentage increase than other cities. And I think that is due to what Councilmember Manalo was saying in terms of the turnover of homes specifically related to us that's different maybe than some of our neighbors. And secondly, with the turnover of those homes and with the new developments that Councilmember Manalo was talking about, that will set a new base for us in terms of property taxes, which any increases would be on a much, a larger base. So that is a very positive thing to have that turnover and those new developments that increase our base so that we can increase, or in a upward housing market environment, increase those future projections on property taxes.
Right. Just one quick thing. So when, say, like, you had your home for 50 years and you want your children to keep the home, but when you will on your home, they reassess the value, correct? And sometimes that they cannot afford, I think Mr. Councilmember Sylvester was saying that, they cannot afford to purchase the home that they inherited, correct? Because it goes for the reassessment value.
And that anecdotally leads to some of those, the sales and leading to the higher property tax base that
Right.
we would experience if that were to occur here.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other questions, comments. I know we still have another half. So I'll throw it back to you.
There are quite a few additional slides, although they're fairly quick per slide. Again, a lot of information. I really appreciate council's questions. It helps us in terms of future budget study sessions look into any questions that weren't addressed this evening. And also, just to note, if you have questions, after this evening, let us know, and we'll be sure to prepare any type of answers for you for the next budget study session. But there are a lot of additional slides that I will go through. Again, fairly quickly. These are general fund requests by department. This is the Office of the City Attorney. What these charts will show, and I will go through these fairly quickly, but not to, glance past important information, but just because they're all very similar. It's showing you the same information on each slide. Revenues are at the top. Expenditures are at the bottom. The columns are fiscal year 24 actuals, fiscal 25 budget, and the requests for fiscal years 26 and 27. At the bottom, you'll see a total expenditure line item, second from the bottom. Those will be total dollars. And then you'll see a percentage change from 25 budget to 26 request, and from the 26 request to the 27 request. So each of these slides coming up will be exactly the same, just different departments. So this is the Office of the City Attorney, the general fund portion of that budget. Office of the City Clerk. The City Clerk, you can see from the second line item, services and supplies, it goes up and down every fiscal year, and that's just based on election costs to the County of San Mateo for elections that occur every 2 years. So those services and supplies costs increase every other year. This is the budget for the City Council. There is an increase for 2026. Prior to the meeting starting tonight, the discussion was about a sister city trip coming up in fiscal year 2026. So there's budget for council and some staff to be able to attend that conference, and then it goes back down the following year, not including that one special event. Next is the Office of the City Manager. As we discussed at the first budget study session, fiscal year 2026 request does increase, and that is due to adding in the budget for economic development for that division. The addition of one FTE into the Office of the City Manager, as well as the cost associated with some economic development projects, including the Top of the Hill Festival. Then it levels out in 2027. There's a very minimal 0.3% increase in 27. The Office of the City Treasurer, and that budget is on slide 25. Economic and Community Development, this is the general fund portion of their budget. And again, showing the same revenues and expenditures as we saw on the other slides. Some of these departments, as you'll see here, have some revenue amounts associated with charges and fees for economic and community development, building fees, planning fees, and other types of fees come in here in the revenue side. This is the finance general fund budget, and nothing, sort of status quo budget on these, as well as many of the other departments as well. Fire general fund budget shows some charges and fee revenue there from inspections and other types of fees charged through the fire department, and the expenditures on the bottom rows. The general fund portion of the Human Resources Department, that's shown here on slide 29. The general fund portion of the library budget is shown here on slide 30. This is the general fund portion of the police budget. We looked at some of the total expenditures earlier. Here you can see a breakout for all the different types of categories of expenditures, as well as revenues in terms of fines and forfeitures. We saw that on an earlier slide for general fund revenue, but that comes in into the police department's revenues. This is the general fund portion of the Public Works Department. This is the full budget for the Recreation Department. Excuse me, the Department of Recreation Services. This is the non-departmental budget. You can notice in this budget where a large portion of the city's revenues come in through non-departmental, so property taxes, sales tax revenue, all that, and other taxes, revenues that you can see. Taxes are on the first line, and then licenses and permits, rents and interest, and those items there. The small increase for 2026 and 27 with interest in terms of how much money we're making investing city funds. Next, after the departmental general fund budgets, we're going to look at some other budgets. So we're going outside of the general fund. We're going into other major city funds. The first one is streets and signals and streetlights. That's Fund 17, and it's managed by Public Works. Similar to the departmental budgets, revenues on top, expenditures on the bottom, and the same for columns of data, and the same percentage change figures at the bottom of each. The next major fund is the Civic Center Fund, Fund 43. That's managed by the Office of the City Attorney. The Motor Vehicles Fund is Fund 51, and that's managed by Public Works. This includes the cost of the division, of motor vehicles division, as well as vehicle replacements. Fund 52 is Central Services, and that's managed by Finance, and that is internal mail, inter-office mail distribution. Building Maintenance is Fund 54, and that's managed by Public Works, and that division has its own fund. Also within Finance is the Information Services Division, Fund 55, similarly has its own fund. And these are funds that the revenues that come into these funds are charged out to departments for services. So building maintenance, custodial, and other types of charges are charged out to departments. And here, information services in terms of equipment, phones, desk phones, cell phones, all those types of things, and equipment, computer equipment. That's all paid. It's all charged out of information services and paid to information services by all city departments. Risk Management Fund 58 is managed both by the Office of the City Attorney as well as the Human Resources Department. Those are the major city funds. These are now the enterprise funds. We'll just look at them briefly. We can go into more detail if needed, but this is first is the water fund. It's showing similar to the general fund expenditures and general fund revenues that we saw earlier, where we just put in an extra column, 2 columns for percentage changes. This also includes capital expenditures. You can see on the second row from the bottom. So these are actual numbers that will be coming to you at a future budget study session. Where we'll do another full presentation of the city budget, and we will show in more detail all of the capital projects that are requested to be funded in fiscal year 2026 and 2027. What's showing here in Water Fund, which is Fund 41, are the capital expenditures that are going to be asked for this budget cycle. Next is the Sanitation Fund, Fund 87. Similarly, capital expenditures for both budget years is included in this slide as just a preview. Again, detailed capital project by capital project detail will come at another budget study session. Lastly, we have some minor city funds, and these are the revenues that you can see in the second column on the left are all the different funds. There are a lot to name and too many to name, but lumped together and which department manages each of those minor city funds, and then what the totals are for those. That's the revenues, and these are the expenditures for the same minor city funds. Rolling all those up together, taking the departmental budgets, taking the major city funds, taking the enterprise funds, and taking the minor city funds, all those together, looking at the 25 budget, the 26 budget request, and the 27 budget request. Citywide, the total budget for revenues is, in 2026, $243 million. Fiscal year 2027, $246.6 million. Looking at the expenditure side, citywide, $238.5 million in 2026 and $242.4 million in 2027. So this slide summarizes all the prior slides together into one slide. Just a couple slides less. This also shows a breakout in a pie chart of general fund expenditures, roughly 50% of citywide revenues or general fund revenues, roughly 54% of general fund expenditures divided by the total citywide expenditures. And then you can see enterprise funds are 28% of revenues, 26% of expenditures. Major city funds, 15 and 17%, and minor city funds, 7 and 3%. Next steps for budget, this budget cycle, we're started negotiations with labor groups just this morning. We had our first meeting with one group, and we will continue negotiations this month and into the rest of the spring and summer. We'll be holding another budget study session number 3, potentially in a few weeks. We're going to hold in April a public hearing for the master fee schedule and the second meeting in April. And then in May, we'll present the full 2026 and 2027 operating and capital budgets for a final review for council. And then in June, as in years past, we will be adding to the city council agenda the adoption of the fiscal year 2026 and 27 operating and capital budgets. That concludes my presentation. And again, any questions are welcome. And we will be, as I mentioned, meeting again in a few weeks to continue this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Are there any questions, comments, feedback from my colleagues? I don't see none. Let me see if Justin texts me. All right, I think we're good. I just want to say thank you to finance and all the staff that attended today. I feel like throughout the times I've been here on council, it feels like it's just getting more and more. It's evolved into something that's more clearer and it's more digestible from the time I came in on board several years ago. And so I just want to say thank you for making everything very very intricate in terms of looking at the numbers, where all the money's coming from, where it's going, and it doesn't feel like a mystery to me. It just feels there's clarity, and I think when we have a lot more clarity, then we understand where we're going and what we can play with and what we can be responsible for. So thank you again to all of y'all and to you, Tim. And just Tim.
Thank you.
All right. I think that's it. All right, everybody. I know. Thanks, everybody.